So today I'm going to be talking about what all I learned in my 255 class. And the way that I take that question is to mean what am I going to take away and be able to apply to my classes in the future, and what really impacted me, and what do I see myself using the most. So that's how I am going to try to answer these questions. Um, the first thing that impacted me, and I think has played a role in all of my classes this semester, because I've had to write a lot of lesson plans, was the UDL framework. Um, and just the fact that it really focuses on the main purpose of a lesson. So, if your lesson is a science lesson, it's okay to provide calculators because it's not a math lesson. So you're not hindering the learning of students who may be very capable in science and not very strong in math. You're not stopping them from learning in other subjects because you're trying to incorporate too many things. So I really liked that a lot, and it has helped me to really focus, because that's where I struggle the most, because I try and cram too many things into every lesson. Um, the second, um, I think, resource would be the best way to say it, that I totally foresee myself using is the UDL toolkit. Of all of the UDL extensions that we explored in this class, that one I can see myself using the most, because it had basically a tool for everything. Two of my favorites were Sweet Search, which only returns scholarly and accurate information, kind of like our peer reviewed articles that we have to find, and also the Creatograph. And I liked that because it allows students to see so many different representations of the same information and really take from it what that information can mean and all the different things that it can mean. So I really I can see myself using those, because I already have put them into some lesson plans and they work great. So that was definitely a good resource. Um, I feel like, oh, I'm not supposed to say I feel like. I say I'll use these things because I am someone who learns differently than a lot of other people. So having these tools at my disposal and being able to say, oh, you're not someone who learns by me just telling you you need a hands-on, let's go find an activity or a tool that allows you to manipulate the information. Um, Again, best example for me is the Creatograph. Being able to take the information out of a story problem and put it in so you can see a visual representation that you have put in there. I think those kinds of experiences are really helpful when kids aren't getting it. Being able to represent it in a different way that maybe you as a teacher couldn't explain as effectively. Um, that said, I was not a huge fan of the UDL Book Builder, mostly because I didn't enjoy the experience of making the book. I felt like it was very complicated. Um, and if I was trying to do this for a student all the time, it was a very time consuming process. And I don't feel as though I would be able to keep up with that if I had a student in my class who needed that kind of representation for a lesson. So I think it's important to know that, because it means I need to find some other way or program that does the same thing, that maybe is more user friendly to me, because I do see the value of um, making the books and being able to do the social stories and all of those different things, especially for students with special needs, but honestly for any student. Even having them make their own books is a really useful tool and helps with comprehension and helps with so many different things. So I see it as a really great tool, just maybe not that program for me. So I definitely think I would explore other avenues of getting that result. Um, Definitely hit a hot spot with me when we talked about the flipped classrooms. I feel like that has been a very popular trend in my classes here at BSU, and we've discussed it a lot. And I actually have a daughter whose teachers use that a lot. And my only hesitation is that if all of the teaching, the main teaching, is taking place outside the classroom, and you have a student who needs to interact, who needs to be able to talk to someone and talk it through, then you're alienating that student. So it's a wonderful resource to have, I think, and I think it would be a great introduction to a lesson, although I'm wary of a completely flipped classroom, because if you're expecting students to come in knowing the material and you're going to start on a whole um, lesson's worth of work, and you've got kids who didn't get it on the videos, there needs to be some time built in to go over it and reteach it and talk about it for those students that don't learn that way. So that is my reaction to that. In talking about the different students, the different kinds of students, I really took a lot from the unit where we talked about the difference between accommodations and modifications and what that means and how those different things can affect a classroom, and really just paying attention to the fact that anything can be an accommodation. It can be or a losing my words. Anything can be seen as assistive technology and can help a student to do better. So accommodations, I think the best way I've ever heard it put was in a seminar, not from this class, but it's not cheating for the kids that need it. It's not unfair to other students because the other students don't need it. And the ones that do need it only need it to be on the same level as the other students. So really breaking down the differences between accommodations and modifications, because I think that's a blurred line in society's perspective. I don't think those two terms are separated very often, and they're kind of used interchangeably. So knowing that in your head and understanding, I'm not changing the requirements for the student, I'm just giving them the tools they need to meet the requirements, versus I need to change the requirements for this student who is, delayed in some way or is not going to meet those standards. And that's okay too. But knowing the difference between them, I think, was really helpful to me and helpful in explaining just to other people. No, this is, what this one is. This is what the other one is. So it was very helpful to me to finally have exact definitions of the two and why they're different, etc. I did like the UDL template for the lesson plans. As tedious as it was to go through and fill it out, I enjoyed having all of the different elements of a good lesson plan listed out, because it's so easy to forget. Oh, hey, I haven't come up with potential modifications to this. I haven't come up with what I'm going to do for a student who needs accommodations. And so having that reminder, even just listed, was really helpful to me. And I like that it breaks it down in a way that it doesn't, for lack of a better word, it doesn't seem like busy work. It doesn't seem like you're filling out different areas just for the sake of putting it there. Every area has a purpose. Um, all of the explanations were so helpful in the lesson plans that we explored that were good examples. Um, and it really makes you think about explaining it as if you weren't the one teaching it. So, really trying to make sure you're writing a plan for someone else who has to be able to understand what you wrote. So, you can't be lazy and just put a shorthand in there. You have to really think it through, include everything, and it's time consuming, and it's, definitely not the best part of the day, but once you have it, it's there. And so I really liked that that was a resource not only to find potential lessons, but also it gave you the framework to be able to build a good lesson, not just throw something together at the very end. I think all of these things are important, especially to me. I have had really great teachers who could teach all different kinds of students, and other teachers that were no less great at their subject, but had only one way of explaining things. So, the focus of this course being about differentiating and having different resources to be able to reach kids that maybe you don't understand or don't connect with or can't figure out how to explain to. I think that's probably the most important thing from this class is just understanding that those resources are out there. They're fairly easily accessible if you know where to look for them. And just understanding why they're important, why it makes such a difference. In the very beginning of the class, we had that whole comparison of the teacher who did the lesson on circles. I think it was a math lesson. And then she reworked the lesson with a purpose, with the proper tools, having things prepared so that the focus of the lesson was actually on the subject matter, not on the process of getting through the lesson. I thought that was the most memorable because I think everyone has great intentions going into it, but if you don't focus, it's very easy to get off track or to get thrown off. So having UDL be the overall framework and really honing in on focusing and how to differentiate and what that really means, I think was the most important part of this class. And yeah, obviously that said, how I'll use it in my future classroom. Of course, I now have the toolkit and whatnot. I know it exists. I know the template's there. And those will be very helpful to me, if nothing else, as a reminder of, okay, here's what a good lesson looks like. If you break it down, if you can fill in all of these different areas well, then your bases are probably covered. And just being able to, like I said, being able to understand that they're out there and to know that you don't have to completely come up with accommodations for people out of nowhere with no assistance. The fact that all that's there for you and you can just search for something is really helpful, and I can definitely see myself applying that in the future. Thank you so much for a wonderful semester, and I hope to continue to be able to apply these things and remember them. Now that I have everything bookmarked, hopefully it'll be easier. But yeah, I think that is probably the most beneficial, and how it will impact my classroom is just knowing it's there, which I didn't before. So thank you so much.